All right, everyone. Hey, good morning. This is part two as a follow-up to my Todoist setup. I've received quite a few requests to go through my Evernote setup here, and so I wanted to take a couple of minutes and do that. I'm going to go through three things in this video here. And the first thing that has been requested of me is just to look at what my setup inside of Evernote is and how I use it alongside of my Todoist setup that I previously created the video and the thread for. So I'm going to go through that setup. But I think more importantly, or what's more helpful about my system is actually my philosophy and my practice of this system and less just about my setup. The setup of Evernote is actually relatively simple, as you can see here over on the sidebar. So I'll talk about the setup. I'm going to go through my philosophy, and then I'm going to go through my practice and how I use this. And then I'll talk a little bit about how I use it in conjunction with Todoist to just stay on top of life and live the life that I want to live and have. So my setup. I've got an inbox. It's over in my observatory here. And this is really my catch-all. This is where new notes go. This just gives me an easy place to capture anything and everything without figuring out how to pre-organize it. And then I process this inbox whenever I'm processing my Todoist inbox as well. And then as far as stacks go over here, I loosely follow Tiago Forte's para methodology, but I've made a few modifications that just work for my brain and how I prefer to use this. And that is these two sections. One is observatory, and then this other one called someday maybe down here. So um, Terra is pretty straightforward. It's a list of your projects, your areas, any resources, and then your archives. So I'll talk about all of these here for just a minute. Observatory is a section that I added because I wanted a place that I could have a few notebooks that were either administrative in nature or they were higher level life focuses. So you'll see this core focus notebook over here has a few documents in it that I'll cover over in philosophy. But I didn't want this in one of the existing para stacks over here. So I made an observatory folder for my inbox core focus. My plans is another big notebook philosophy that I'll talk about. And then Tickler and Waiting For are just two more notebooks that I wanted to have. Tickler is a place basically where I put reference material for upcoming things that I don't need quite yet. A great example would be plane tickets for a trip that's in the future, or maybe concert tickets for something that's in the future. I'll put those things here, and then I just put dates on the beginning of those notes so that when they come up, it's just easy for me to scan that list. This never really has more than a handful of things in it at any one time, but it just helps my brain to organize those things and know exactly where they're at. And then waiting for is similar, but it's things that don't have a specific date that they're coming up on. I'm just waiting for them to come in. So great examples would be like order confirmations. I buy something online, I'm waiting for it to come. I don't know when it's going to show up. I'll put that inside of waiting for here. Um, and then you've got projects. I have a notebook for every project that is active and on my plate inside of this project stack here. And I always keep this in sync with my Todoist project lists that you see in my other video. That way I can just dump any and all notes related to individual projects into their related notebooks. That's what's in this stack. And then I've got areas here. Areas also relates to the area stacks that I have inside of Todoist. And essentially, there's a notebook for each area of my life, and I just put any kind of like administrative or related information to specific areas inside of those notebooks. Someday maybe is a concept that I added in here. And this is essentially where there's projects or initiatives that I might want to tackle in the future that I might randomly collect information on, but it's not active or actionable right now. And so a great example of this is my wife and I have talked about taking a trip to Ireland at some point in the future, but we don't have specific dates that we want to do that on. However, we come across random things of places that we might want to visit or things that we might want to do while we're there. And so I want a place to store those. And so I created a notebook for the Ireland trip inside of this stack. And so that along the way, I can just collect random information about that trip. And that way I have it for reference in the future whenever we decide that we actually want to move forward with taking that trip. So someday maybe is just a short list of notebooks for things that I know for sure I want to do in the future that I'm collecting information on now. I use resources exactly as Tiago teaches it. These are essentially just areas of interest in my life. Anything and everything that I just have an affinity for, I create a notebook for in here. So examples could be I'm an avid golf player, so I have a golf notebook that I collect any and all things about that in here. As a marketer, I have swipe files in here for landing pages or email sequences or advertisements that I see that I really like. I've got recipe notebooks in here. So you kind of get the idea, just anything and everything that is an interest or an affinity of mine. I have a notebook for it, and that way I can just dump random things that are really interesting to me in here along the way. And then archive, I have it here, but I actually really don't use this stack all that much. It typically collects projects that have been completed, and I put them in here. But I have actually just been exporting those notebooks and saving them as Emacs files in my file system. I found that I almost never go back and reference project materials once that project is done. And so I store them outside of Evernote. And on the off chance that I ever want to reference that, I know that I have that Emacs file. I can go back and load that into Evernote again, and it's there. So really, this archive stack just has a couple of notebooks, one for each company or domain of my life that I can stuff away notes that aren't active or relevant anymore, but there's a chance I may want to have them in the future. And so I just really manage this whole system very dynamically. I don't have like a specific review process outside of my inbox where I go through all of these different notebooks and try and organize or sort them. I sort of do those things in the moment. So for instance, if I'm go into my waiting for notebook at some point and I'm trying to find something and I see there's an old note there that's no longer relevant, I'll go ahead and just delete it during then. But I don't have a set time that I go into my waiting for notebook to try and clean it up and organize it. I manage this whole system that way. So same thing, if I go into a resources notebook at some point, say I'm trying to find an old set of golf clubs that I had saved a clip for online, and I go into the golf notebook and I see three other notes that are just no longer relevant to me. I'll go ahead and delete them at that time, but I never really go through here and clean these up at specific times. So that's the setup. And again, it's very simple. And just like my Todoist, I keep it simple because anytime I've tried to make it more complex than that, it just stops working for me. It stops being a helpful asset. It just becomes a cumbersome thing to manage. And I really try and keep this in sync with my Todoist setup as well. So next, I want to talk about philosophy, and this is actually where I think the magic for me happens. And there's a few different things I want to get into here. And this is really what ties back to how I manage my life, and it relates to my Todoist setup. And so I'm going to go through a few things here. Overall, I would describe my philosophy as top-down lifestyle design. And what I mean by that is it can be really easy to jump into something like Todoist and be looking at projects and tasks and actions and let that sort of run your life on a daily basis. My brain really needs to see life's horizons and then filter every action and every decision and every calendar event through that lens so that I always know that I'm tracking for the person that I want to be and the life that I want to live. And so, this idea of top down lifestyle design is something that I really adhere to so that I'm not just always getting stuck in day to day weeds and never coming up for air and making sure that I'm living the life that I want to live. So there's a few things that really help me to do that, and I want to talk through that and how they relate to my Todoist setup that I posted about because I think it could be really helpful for some people. One is targets and horizons. I created an example version of this here. If I click into this is a really simple document that I maintain and update. I create a version of it once a year, actually. So you can see I have 2025 designation here. Next year, I'll make a 2026 version. But essentially, this is four sections. I have life goals, 10-year lifestyle design, 3-year targets, and 1-year targets. And the purpose of this document is to just act as a reminder for me of the direction that I am heading in life. One thing that you'll see as I go through these sections here is that I don't define things like I want to have this car or live in this house or make this much money. I very much make this document about this is the kind of person that I want to be, and this is the life that I want to live in the world. And I really try and keep it specific to that because things like where I'm going to live and what house I'm going to be in and what kind of money that I'm going to make are actually so difficult to truly control that defining them just always makes me feel like in a state of failure. So I'd rather define like who I want to be and what I want life to feel like rather than the things that I'm going to have or what I'm going to do because I can always be in a state of success and then be moving forward and refining as a person and a human. So lifestyle or life goals, this is really like, what do I want my whole life to be about? And I really keep this as a short list. In my actual document, there's only like 10 things on here. It's really about who I want to be in the world rather than what I want to have. So a great example of one of mine is I really want to be a present dad, both physically and emotionally. Like I just want my kids to grow up and say, my dad was around. He was awesome. He was always present with us no matter what was going on. And so that's one of my goals in the world and in my life for who I want to be. So it's things like that that I set as life goals. And then I moved down into 10-year lifestyle design. This puts a little bit of a box around timeframes. And you can see here, I've left this in here, and this will give away my age, but that's fine. Um, I put down what the year is in 10 years, how old I am, how old my wife is, how old my kids are. And it's sort of just this sobering frame of reference of like, oh, in 10 years, I'm going to be 42 years old. I'm 32 right now. Um, and that seems so far when I look at 10 year, but then when I look at this, I go, wow, that's not like that far away. And I, could die 30 years after that or 40 years or whatever, so what do I want to do? So in 10 year, I put a more of a qualitative description of my lifestyle and identity in 10 years. This I do include things that are more measurable, but it's still largely based on what do I want life to feel like in 10 years. And so examples of this for me is I put in things like my wife and I want to eventually live on some level of land so that we can let the kids just be running around and do some small scale farming and stuff like that. Super trendy on Instagram, I know, but hey, it's on our goals. So it's things like that, but it's still, I don't have in here like, here's the car I want to drive, here's the exact location I want to live in, here's how big the house is. It's just more like in 10 years, ideally, what would our life be like? 3 year targets. This is where I'm backing in a little bit more. I do the same philosophy with the year and ages here. I just get a little bit more specific to help me make sure that in 3 years, I'm making progress towards this general target or destination that I'm trying to hit in 10 years. But again, focused on lifestyle and identity rather than specifics. This could be things like, I want to have progressed to a higher senior management role for some people, or you want to progress from being an executive into a business owner or whatever. It's identity based, not specific, but gives you an idea of who you want to be in the world. And then 1 year targets, these are definitely more tangible, more quantifiable. This year, 2025, what are the end outcomes that I want to realize? So some examples here could be like health goals, like you want to lose X number of pounds, or money goals, you want to invest X number of dollars into a brokerage account by the end of the year, or career goals. You want to start a new business, you want to land X job, or you want to graduate college, depending on where you're at in life. All of those things can be under 1 year, and all of these bubble up into one another. And so basically, it's just levels of progress towards who you're trying to be in the world. And I think that who you're trying to be is so important because it keeps you at every level here in a state of constant progression and winning rather than feeling like you're always in a constant state of lack and failure until you achieve these. It's just like this would be cool to get to, and this would be cool to get to, and this would be cool to get to, but I'm good right now, and this is what I'm going to do and be right now, and I enjoy that. And I also know that in doing this and being these things, it will help me make progress towards this. So I'm winning now, and I win later. And that's how I really try and think about it. Um, so that's targets. That's how I look at them. I want to define targets and goals really quick. I look at a target as a specific destination that I would like to arrive at, whether that's an identity descriptor or, whatever it is. And I look at and define goals as the things that I want to do. Um, at things that I want to do that will help me arrive at that destination. And I think both there's nuance in what you could call this. This is just what makes sense in my brain. But goals is what are the key actions or projects or initiatives that I need to accomplish in order to make progress towards and arrive at the targets or the destinations that I've set up myself. And so that's also sort of the philosophy that this targets document is set up on. The next thing that I want to go into that is an idea that I got from a guy named Taylor Welch. I met him one time at a conference and had a good conversation about this. This morning formula is probably the most important document and the most important part of my notes setup, my to-do list, like any of these systems. And this is essentially a descriptor of my identity and who I want to be. And this has taken years for me to develop and to refine, and I've gone through all kinds of iterations. But I think that everyone should do this. And the reason it's called the morning formula is because you literally look at this document every single morning before you do anything else as just a reminder of who you are trying to be in the world. Some of that is who you're trying to become, but it's also just who you're trying to be right now, living in your day to day life. And the reason this is so important is because when you center your mind every single morning on who you want to be, then all of these other decisions and questions around what should I put on my calendar? What should go inside of my Todoist? What do I capture inside of my notes app? They get filtered through this lens of like who I'm trying to be. And then all of a sudden, the idea of mind like water, letting things float past me, letting things go by becomes much easier because I realize I don't have to capture 80% of anything because they're not related to and relevant to who I'm trying to be in the world. This is like permission to say no to so many things because I'm constantly reminding myself of what's important to me. So I'll quickly go through the categories in here. I have at the top of this document this year's word. Every year I decide one theme for the year, one word that's like the defining theme for the year. And then I just put a few bullet points underneath that that sort of help paint the picture or describe really what that means to me for the year. Then I've got this identity section. This is a short list. In my real document, it's about 15 items long. And it's literally like labels, identity labels that I want to know myself as or experience myself as. And that's really important because this is less about how I want other people to perceive me. This is how I want to feel myself and view myself in the world. And so I've got things in here, again, like that present father. I've got like loving husband. I've got athlete in here, just things like that. These are the ways that I want to feel and show up in the world. So get really, really specific to yourself. Purpose is a one liner, like a very high level intention for your life. And this is where you could put things like, if you're a religious person, like what's the guiding light of your religion? Or, if you're agnostic or atheist, like what do you want your life to be or to mean? Like, why do you as a human exist? I would make this a short, punchy one or two liner. And then your mission is what are you trying to do? And the difference between mission and purpose is this is like why I exist here. And this is like what my life will accomplish in the world. Like what will my life have resulted as if I get to pick and choose that. Then I've got a list of values here. And I have about 9 of them. Make these really specific. It's really easy to say things like integrity and honesty and generosity. Like those things are fine, but like really, really, what do you value? What is super important to you? And a great way to figure this out is just to look at where you spend your time. And what do you spend your time on? That will give you a list of what you currently value. Codes of conduct. I have this separated into 2 sections, and this is a short list for each of these sections, but it's things and ways that I always operate in and things I never do and always avoid. And so on my documents, these each have about 7 to 10 items on them. And it just looks like I always wake up at, or no, in codes of conduct, this would be things like I always lean into more generosity than less, or and never, it could be like I never say no to the opportunity to give my kids one more hug before I run out the door for the day. If they're saying, Daddy, say bye, like I'm never like rush out on stuff like that. What is important to you that you always do and you never do, regardless of how you might feel in a moment? You make these commitments to yourself. Areas of responsibility. These match what's in my Todoist. They match over here. They're just a high level reminder. I call them tangentially, I also call them areas of stewardship. Like, what am I stewarding over in life right now? And then I've got core disciplines. This is a list of core habits that you want to practice. It should be a short list. For me, this is things like I wake up at 5 a.m. every day, I exercise every day, I do different things like that, and it's a short list, just like what makes you operate at your best on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And then I also create a list of things that I want to limit or avoid entirely. This could be things like social media. It could have alcohol on it. It could have like caffeine. Like for me, I limit my alcohol intake to no more than 2 drinks in one sitting and no more than one time per week, just because I feel bad if I do more than that. Or I never have more than 2 cups of coffee because my body doesn't process it. Or I don't spend more than 10 minutes on social media and during any one day. Stuff like that. Just what things that do you do that hurt or hinder your life or your ability to show up and be the person that you want to be goes on this list. Models is a short list of people that you really admire and want to emulate in different ways or for different reasons. This should be short, 3 to 10 people max. But the reason it's helpful is when you look at it, you're inspired by it and you're inspired by these people that you've really admired. And so if you look at it on a daily basis, it gets your brain focused on being the right person, being the right things, and having helpful models that can act as guiding lights for you. I've got this reminder section. This is a short list of things that you personally need to remember to be the best version of yourself. This is a catch-all. It's like pithy quotes that you've heard or things that you need to hear. Like if you need to tell yourself that you're beautiful every day, do that. If you need to tell yourself that, you're not weak, like just random stuff like that. You heard a quote that was really impactful, put those there. An example of mine that's really helpful for me every day is that I belong anywhere and fit in anywhere, that I show up with a spirit of gratitude, humility, and joy to be there. Throughout my life, I have struggled in different times and seasons with feeling like I've fit in different places. And so I have to remind myself always that if I'm just showing up with a spirit of gratitude and humility and joy, then I automatically belong there and can be received there without any other expectations or facades. So my list here is about 20 items long. This should be super, super personal. And don't feel like you have to build it right up front. This could start with one thing and then over time you build it. The point is that it's things that are very, very relevant to you and super impactful to you. And then finally, I've got zones of genius. This is where I put my core giftings and my strengths, basically the things that I do really, really well in the world compared to other people. And then I also have a reminder of things that I'm just not that great at that I need to partner with other people on, so that if I ever catch myself getting too much into these things, rather than trying to figure out how to do more of them or do them better or more efficiently, I can know that I need to go find help on those things. So this morning formula, I can't express enough how powerful this is. Be patient with it. Take time to develop it. It does take time to develop it and refine it, but it is so powerful if you look at this every single morning for filtering all of these other decisions like what tasks should I get done? What projects should I work on? What should go on my calendar? Like all that stuff gets way more clear when you're clear at this level here. Um, the annual review, I want to briefly touch on this. I use a tool called the Year Compass, but rather than doing annual planning, I spend most of my time doing an annual reflection. And I found that I learn far more from just looking back on what happened than I do just sitting down trying to plan way ahead. And so the Year Compass is the tool that I use for this. It's just a really helpful set of questions. It takes me about 4 hours during Christmas time every year. And I go through it and I just get incredible epiphanies and insights about things I want to adjust in my life or change or pivots or, things I want to do ahead. And then it makes creating this targets document and getting my word of the year like a 20-minute task because I get such insane clarity from doing this. So I don't want to go too much into this. Maybe this is a future video, but the importance of reflection to me is absolutely massive. And then as far as my processes for top-down planning, I create annual plan from my targets and from this reflection here. And so if I go into this, this is super short. This is what's the theme of the year as a reminder. I have targets, which is a reminder, the short list of destinations or outcomes that I want to hit this year. And then I have goals. This is a short list of things I need to do to hit these destinations or outcomes this year. And then I just have a short table of key dates for this year. This is really just things like when do we have executive offsites, or when are we taking vacations, or are we planning on moving, during a certain month, stuff like that. So it's not calendar events. It's just like really high level things for the year on here. Um, and so that gets created at the beginning of the year after my reflection, and my targets document gets created alongside that. And then every quarter, I do a quarterly review and plan. I'm not going to talk about that process, but this essentially looks exactly the same as my annual plan. So I've got the theme of the year as a reminder here. I've got targets for the quarter, goals for the quarter. I add this one section called radar. This is essentially a short list of things that are coming up, but likely outside of this quarter, that I don't need to be doing anything on yet, but I need to be thinking about. So in a business context, say this is like initiatives for 1 or 2 quarters ahead or later this year that I need to be ruminating on, but I don't need a specific project for yet. I'm not doing anything. I just need to be thinking about it. This acts as like a catch-all to help remind me of that. And then I've got key events for the quarter here. And then this gets down into closer to the Todoist level, and where we'll relate back to that video. But I create a weekly plan every week. And this is super, super simple, but this is what I referenced in that Todoist video as the plan that I make that helps to guide what my actual actions inside of Todoist are. I have 3 sections in here. I have goals, events, and next week. Goals is essentially what are the outcomes that I need to accomplish this week to stay on pace for my quarterly plan. So if you remember from the Todoist video, I am currently hiring a content marketing specialist or manager. And so there was like a list of 6 or 7 actions inside of Todoist that were all related to that. I might put a goal for the week as get that position listing live, which inside of Todoist would look like multiple actions. But in my weekly plan document, it is one line item, and that is my goal to accomplish for the week. This is typically pretty short. I typically have 5 to 7 things for the week here that I'm trying to get done. And then I have this events section. This is just key events for the week. This is by no means all events on my calendar. It's only standout items. So this might be important one-off events. It might be key deadlines for the week. Anything like that. This is also typically short. Usually it's only like 3 to 7 items long, but it's just a good flyover of things on my radar for this week. And then next week is similar. It's just a short list of important things for next week on my radar so that I can kind of have an idea and perspective of what's ahead. Key events, deadlines, work focuses that probably need for next week. This list again is only 3 to 7 items. I create this during my weekly review, and it provides so much clarity on Mondays for what my week needs to be about. And then I get into my Todoist, and it helps me filter all of my tasks, all my decisions. It helps me figure out whether I can just delete half of what's in my inbox. What do I need to delegate to other people? What do I truly need to mark as P1 versus P2 for the week? That actually happens because of this weekly plan document. And this gets created because I have a quarterly plan. And the quarterly plan gets created because I have an annual plan. And the annual plans get created because I have the targets document and the morning formula document telling me who I'm trying to be and where I'm trying to go in the world. And so having that clarity, that's what I mean in my post about having clarity at the higher levels, is what creates margin and bandwidth and capacity and clarity at the lower levels. Because now I'm not just living inside of Todoist going, what should I do? How can I perfectly organize all of these tasks? How do I know in Evernote what information to save or what not to save? That is all taken care of and answered for me because I have this higher level of clarity and have spent time here. So just so important, top-down lifestyle planning. The last thing here, as far as what gets stored inside of Evernote, I have a similar philosophy where I don't capture the majority of things that come at me. I let most of it flow by. So this is not my second brain in the sense that it has anything and everything. I really try and only keep things that are truly remarkable, truly memorable, or super interesting. Things that are mission critical or things that save my ass. Things that like IRS notifications or things like that that I definitely need reference to. So to give you an idea, I only have about 1,000 notes currently in Evernote. I keep it lean and mean. I delete things on a regular basis when they are no longer relevant. So I don't let things just build up inside of here when I'm likely never going to want it again. If I read an article and I go, oh, that was kind of cool or interesting, I don't save the article. I will just pull up a journal. I'm going to use day one for journaling, and I'll just write out like the quick 1 to 3 sentences of what was remarkable about that article to me and what I took away from it, rather than saving an article inside of Evernote, thinking that someday I'm going to magically want to go back and read that article because I never do. So I really try and let most things float past me and keep this nice and organized. All of my Evernote is centered around the idea of top-down lifestyle design and plan, and then I do have this resources section for just things I'm interested in, and this is the kind of stuff that I save there. So practices, annual review, quarterly planning and reflection, weekly planning is huge. Targets and goals, events next week. My daily disciplines, as you saw in my morning for you document, which relates to just keep chopping wood. I do my daily disciplines, I do my daily tasks. I know that I have clarity at the higher levels, which makes it me free on a daily basis to have clarity at the lower levels. Um, I let things float downstream. I don't save nearly everything. I don't save 80% of what comes at me. Creating higher clarity at the higher levels creates calm and margin at the lower levels. These are key philosophies of mine. Um, and so Evernote really is a life management place, and I use Todoist with it, just as a way to have that clarity. And really, the intention is to be and become the person that I want to be in the world. The beauty of this system is that it works with any task manager, any notes app. You could do this inside of Google Documents if you wanted to. You could do this in Things, you could do it in Apple Reminders, you could do it in Apple Notes. It works anywhere and everywhere. And I think that's so important is that it's tool agnostic and it's more about the philosophy and the principles rather than the setup. So there's so many rabbit trails that I could go into, so many other conversations, and I've seen that this video is already getting a little bit long here. So I'm going to stop this here. But if anybody has questions or wants further clarity in any other areas, let me know. Hopefully this was helpful. I'll put some of the links to like Year Compass down inside of the description for this video so that you have easy access to that. And at the end of the day, just keep chopping wood and remember that it's all about who you want to be and who you want to become in the world. That is the most important thing. Cheers.